Behind every silence, there is a story of survival waiting to be told. Stories hidden in plain sight. Truth buried beneath fear. This is the Maxwell Matewere podcast, unmasking the truth, revealing the crime, and giving a voice to the voiceless. Investigative discussions, insightful, thought-driven. The podcast that reinforces authority and human rights mission. Real stories, real investigations, real impact. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Maxwell Matewere podcast, the podcast that exposes an underground world where children disappear, women are broken, and men are reduced to disposable labor, all while society looks away. Through real-life cases and survivor testimonies, the Maxwell Matewere podcast exposes how human traffickers weaponize poverty, trust, promises, and psychological manipulation. How children are recruited and transported across borders, all under the guise of adoption. How young girls are deceived into prostitution and violent sexual captivity. How men are trapped in forced labor, stripped of pay, stripped of identity and hope. Discussions are based on the book Human Trafficking Exposed, written by Maxwell Matewere, that can be purchased through retailers worldwide, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble. This is an eye-opening book that takes the readers beyond statistics. It takes them into the realities of men, women, and children that are ensnared in the web of human trafficking. It is drawn from real cases, real victims, and real frontline experience. Human Trafficking Exposed is not a theory. It exposes the truth to protect the vulnerable and defend human dignity. In today's podcast, we continue looking at child trafficking and illegal adoptions as serious violations of human rights and child protection laws. Our guest today, Justice Fiona Mwale, is a well-known judicial officer responsible for statutory compliance and judicial oversight. She is here to help us understand the concept of illegal or unethical adoption practices. I am your host, Vigil Thondoya. Welcome to our podcast, Justice Mwale.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am fine. We're really honored to have you today answering all the questions and really shedding light on the concept of illegal adoption or unethical adoption. What privilege to have you today as our guest. You have been a champion for children all over the world for many years. Would you be kind to introduce yourself and the work that you have done?
Thank you very much. Briefly, my name is Fiona Atupele Mwale. I am a judge of the High Court. So first and foremost, I am a judicial officer and currently the judge in charge of the Family and Probate Division, which is a division in the High Court of Malawi that deals with family matters, including children. So issues of adoption, child maintenance, guardianship, child protection issues fall into the jurisdiction of my court.
We hear so much about adoption. As Malawians, I think we've heard it maybe in passing, we've heard it on the news, but usually it's about a foreigner adopting a child from Malawi. So maybe just what is adoption?
I think the best way for me to explain it is to give you an illustration.
Right.
So assume you are adopted,
okay,
and assume you have a birth certificate. Let's say that's your birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
The names on that birth certificate are not going to be the names of the people who gave birth to you, mm-hmm, the people who gave you life. It's going to be the names of the people who chose to protect your life.
Okay.
That is the reality of adoption. So basically, it's a two-tier process. One, which is based on a social work philosophy, which acts as a shield to protect vulnerable children who are in need of care and protection, and finds them that care and protection. On the other side, there's the legal system, which then steps in to make that safety permanent. So once parents have been identified, they've come forward to adopt that child, the law comes in to give them rights of parentage, parental rights, so that they now become the parents of that child. Legally. So ordinarily, you would give birth to a child and the law automatically gives you parental rights over that child. But if you haven't given birth to a child, you will need a certificate from a court that gives you those parental rights. And so in legal talk, we call adoption a legal fiction. So it is a fiction because it's not true. You didn't give birth to that child. But the law has declared that from this day forward, you are now the biological parent of that child.
As a result also of that social, psychological aspect that you want to protect the life of this child.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned, of course, that it's a two-tier process. Well, then, where does the judiciary, where does it come in? What's the role of the judiciary? Just to elaborate on that.
Okay. So the judiciary comes in because it is the only branch of government that can make declarations that will then be binding. So if a court said, for instance, if there was a court order that said from today on you're no longer going to be a woman, you're going to be a man, that is going to be the reality. So the judiciary is the only one that can make court orders that alter a person's legal status. So there are two types of adoption that are possible in Malawi. We have a local adoption. That is presided over by our lower courts, especially established magistrate court, the child justice courts. So if you are a Malawian and you want to adopt a child, you go to the child justice court. But if you are a foreigner, you've come into Malawi, you are adopting a child, you go to the high court. And it's not restricted just to foreigners. But if you are going to be moving out of Malawi with that child, you also get the adoption order in the high court.
Now, what about the social welfare officers in the ministry of the ministry that is responsible for children, like the Ministry of Gender, Community Development and Social Welfare? Where do they come in?
So, as I said in my definition, we have a two-tier process. We have the social welfare aspect, the social work philosophy, and then we have the legal. So the Ministry of Gender, Community and Social Welfare, which I'm just going to call the ministry responsible for children in short, they focus on the fact that adoption is primarily a child protection mechanism. All the court does is come in at the end to give it legal status. So that ministry does all the donkey work. In fact, we say that social work forms the engine, the steering wheel, and the safety gear of the entire process. And the court's role is only 5%. So I can give you a breakdown. I can give you a breakdown on these roles. So ultimately, the ministry responsible for children is the one that does all the paperwork. We've said that this is a function about finding a needed child, a family. So first and foremost, we must have a child who's declared needy.
Yes.
It can't be a child that has a mother and father who look after that child. It is that ministry that finds and identifies a child who is eligible for adoption. That same ministry is then given the task of doing investigations. They investigate the child's circumstances. Who was responsible for this child? Because for this child to now be adopted, somebody will need to give consent. So if they are parents, they will have to go and trace and find who those parents are. They will do a comprehensive care assessment so that when the matter goes to court, long before the matter can even reach a judge, the Ministry of Gender, the ministry responsible for children, has done that assessment. And the reason they are doing that assessment is that they want the best interests of the child to be the primary consideration. So if you want to adopt a child, there should be no other reason other than the best interest of the child. So if you allow me, I will break this down, what the Ministry of Gender does. The first thing, as I said, is a gatekeeping role. That's where you identify that this child should be adopted because Maybe they don't have parents. Maybe they were abandoned. Maybe they had parents, but those parents are no longer fit and proper for the job. So one of the laws that I talked about at the beginning, the Child Care Protection and Justice Act, it tells you when a child is in need of care and protection.
Yes.
So for instance, if a child is just begging on the street, maybe that child has parents, but if there are lots of other factors combined, it shows that that child is lacking care and protection.
Yes.
That child can be reassigned. If those parental rights are terminated, it can be he or she can be reassigned to another parent. Another thing that the ministry checks is that there is no local person who is available to adopt the child. So now I'm talking about the High Court process.
Yes.
So if it's in the Magistrates Court, it's automatic. In the Child Justice Court, they don't need to do that. But if it's a case that has come to the High Court and it is a foreigner who is adopting, in international adoption practice, we have what we call the principle of subsidiarity. That means, first and foremost, a child should be taken care of by their family, by their community, in their country. So the Ministry of Gender is responsible for ensuring that, one, there are no family members, two, there's nobody in the community. Then, once that is done, they also look into institutional oversight. Because some of these children are in orphanages, in institutions, what they call CCIs,
Yes.
child care institutions. So they are responsible for overseeing those institutions to make sure that the children that are in those institutions are the children that are eligible to be there in the first place.
Yes.
So that's the gatekeeping function. Second function that the ministry performs is a vetting and risk assessment. So they conduct what we call an adoption home study.
Okay.
You will understand the importance of this when I then discuss the role of the courts. So before we even get to court, all these things are happening
Yes.
in the background. So they conduct a home study. They do a very comprehensive report on the child. And that home study involves asking a lot of questions, going to departments, doing checks, and all sorts of things. So that is vetting and risk assessment. They are vetting not only the child, but also the people who have come forward to adopt the child. They are checking, are these the right sort of people? Do they have criminal records? Do they have enough money to look after the child?
Yes.
And when they are doing that, they are doing it for their third function, because the third function of the ministry is to match the child with an appropriate parent. So they will have a database of children. They have a database. When people want a child, they must go onto a database. They will submit their names and their details. So there's a database of parents. So now they have to match which of these parents is suitable for the child. The process is always child-centered. We don't care about the parents' needs or wants.
But it's the child.
It's the child who is,
process
yes.
moves.
So everything we do in adoption is in the best interests of the child. So basically, sometimes children have trauma.
Oh yes, that's true.
You adopt a child who has trauma and you're not equipped to deal with that trauma, you're in trouble.
Both the child
and you are in trouble.
Yes.
So the matching has to be done perfectly to ensure that if I'm adopting a child with trauma, I am psychologically, financially, physically, everything equipped to deal with a child with trauma. Cultural and cultural identity, religious identity.
Yes.
Imagine I'm a Christian. I adopt a Muslim child. What if I don't know anything about Islam? Because one of the things you want to do is to be able to continue a child's cultural identity.
Yes.
So if I don't know anything about this, there's going to be a problem.
It's now becoming interesting as you're breaking it down, that really this process is in the best interest of the child. I think most Malawians, or really not only Malawians, people, Africans and other people, as they're listening right now, they're watching, they're beginning to understand that adoption is in the best interest of the child. Mostly we focus on the parents.
Yes.
But it's for the child, and that it's very important. The role that the ministry plays and the judiciary. So I did cut you short. I don't know if you had finished.
Yes, I have. So there's one more thing that I have to say. So when they do all this, the Ministry of Gender, when they've done all this work that I'm talking about, that's when the parent, their prospective parent, can then make an application to the court to say, I want to adopt a child. Now, when they make that application, the first thing the court will do, before they even invite you to come to court, they will appoint a member of the Department of Social Welfare, one of the members of staff there, to be what we call a guardian ad litem.
Okay.
That means the child's guardian, the person who is going to look after the child's interests when the matter comes to court. So it's this guardian ad litem who comes to court to speak for the child. Many of these are babies. So you can imagine you're a child, you are in the middle of a system, there's social welfare, there's police, there's NRB, there's all sorts of government departments that have that are stakeholders in issues concerning that child. But we never hear the child's voice if it wasn't for the guardian ad litem. So this person brings the report, they let the court know exactly what it is that they need to consider in order for that adoption to go through. So that is the first tier, the social work function. Now, when you finished that, that's when we come to the role of the court.
Okay.
So most people assume that adoption is something that happens and is done by the courts. Yes, the courts just come right at the end. 95% social welfare duties. 5% is court function. So now I believe you had asked me what the role of both the courts and the social. Yes. So having told you about the role of the ministry, the court's role is one of auditing or compliance. We are there at the end of the process to make sure that everything has been done properly, the laws have been complied with. So before I go in, maybe I can just explain one thing.
Yes.
So because this is 95% social welfare work, courts lack the training to do any of the matching. You know, we can't say you should have taken this child and given it to this parent. We rely on the Department of Social Welfare to have actually done all that work to make sure that they have followed the correct procedure, the documentation is correct, everything has been done ethically. So when it comes to court, the court is simply cross-checking the law and content auditing. So when I say cross-checking the law, I better give you an indication of what that law is.
Yes.
So I had also said at the beginning that we have an Adoption of Children Act. It's a very old piece of legislation which would have been reviewed after the Law Commission review in 2009, but for various reasons, it's still pending review.
Okay.
So at the moment, that is still the law.
Okay.
The Adoption of Children Act. And that law provides certain, before a court can give you a certificate that you are the parent of this child, after social welfare has done all its checks, before it can give you that certificate, it also checks legal requirements aimed to safeguard the child. So first and foremost, in Malawi, if you want to adopt a child, you must be at least 25 years old.
Okay.
First and foremost, if you come in, you are 24,
you can't.
Ordinarily, we're not going to even entertain that. Another thing that the law says is you have to be at least 21 years older than the child. So if you're 26 years old, you want to adopt a 10-year-old, we're not going to allow you. So even if social welfare has done a brilliant report,
yes,
but you don't satisfy these requirements, you are not going to get the child. If you are a male and you want to adopt a female child, ordinarily, we're not going to allow you.
Is there a reason?
It's a very old law. Okay. So in those days, we derive the Adoption of Children Act from 1949 English piece of legislation. And in those days, the only danger to young girls was adult men.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons why the law needs to change. There are more dangers out there these days than there were in the past. But that is the law as it stands.
And you did mention that it is pending review.
It is pending review,
okay.
yes.
All
yes.
Right.
And
please proceed.
Okay. And also, you must have consent for the adoption. So if you don't have consent from the biological parents or guardian or anybody who has parental responsibility over that child. So you have to understand that not every child has parents, but in some circumstances, people can go to court for guardianship. So if anybody has parental rights over that child, you must first get consent from them. That consent must be given freely. So if you pay somebody money and then they consent, that is not consent.
Okay.
If you threaten, coerce somebody, so now you're beginning to see the link with trafficking.
Yes.
If you deceive someone, that is not consent.
That's where now the human trafficking comes in.
That is where the link comes in. It's there in many respects, but that we can now see where
it's going to.
Yes.
Maybe if you haven't exhausted everything, please go ahead.
All right, let me finish. I think there are one or two more. So if you are a married person and you're adopting a child, you can't adopt alone without the other party to the marriage consenting as well.
Okay.
So it's either Mr. and Mrs., but if it's Mr. only, the wife must come to court and consent that I'm not adopting, but I'm allowing my husband to adopt, or vice versa. And the last requirement that is actually in the law is that you must be resident in Malawi in order to adopt a child. However, we have interpreted residence in Malawi in a very wide way. So we, depending on the circumstances of the case, we define residence depending on that. So if you come into Malawi, you do some work, or you come into Malawi, you have some links or whatever. And that's how foreigners are able to adopt. But the law in black and white says you have to be resident. But the law has interpreted residence in a way that can be more open.
Accommodating.
Yes. So as you can see, the court's role is now to check that, to checkpoint with the law. Has this been final? Has this been done? Has this been done? Has this been done? And has the Department of Social Welfare through the guardian ad litem done everything that it was supposed to do? So it usually gives the impression that the court is just there to rubber stamp what the others have done and just to, just ticking boxes. But it's actually a lot more than that, because the court is the last barrier of protection for that child. If the guardian ad litem has missed anything, it is the court that is supposed to check to make sure that nobody should take this child and exploit them. So that is the fundamental role of the court. Though it makes up 5%, it is that role that makes sure that the child really is going to be genuinely adopted by people who have the child's best interests at heart.
And of course, if anybody has any proof that there was an exchange of money or a coercion of some sort, this child or someone along the line was threatened into letting this child get adopted, and they present that to the courts, then the courts know exactly what to do. And of course, that brings protection to the child, keeping also the protection of the child in mind and the laws intact. Thank you very much, Justice Mwale. We take a short break and we'll be right back.
Behind every silence, there is a story of survival waiting to be told. Stories hidden in plain sight. Truth buried beneath fear. This is the Maxwell Matewere podcast, unmasking the truth, revealing the crime, and giving a voice to the voiceless. Investigative discussions, insightful, thought-driven. The podcast that reinforces authority and human rights mission. Real stories, real investigations, real impact. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We continue looking at illegal adoptions and child trafficking as serious violations against human rights and child protection laws. And today with us is Justice Fiona Mwale. Justice Mwale, there's a well-documented report that was published on the 27th of June in 2025, and it highlights a sharp increase of inter-country adoptions. Why is this?
It's a very big question. So adoption is a global trend. We are living in a world where people can travel all over the world. They have more resources. So as we move to modernity and we are globalized, people are able to travel more and adopt more children. So you'll find that more children are being adopted now than they used to be in the past.
Okay.
We also note that these days women are more interested in careers and they decide to have families late, so which means fertility is delayed. So you find that many people, by the time they want to have a family, they can't have their children naturally. So that, there are so many reasons why there's a sharp increase in intercountry adoption. But perhaps if you were to ask why is it that the intercountry adoptions are increasing in Malawi, there could also be a number of reasons. Okay. I can't give you a definitive answer, but one of the reasons why we are getting more people coming to adopt in Malawi is that our laws are relatively less strict than other laws.
Okay.
So the requirements that we have in the Adoption of Children Act, the ones that I read out to you, they are fewer in number than the restrictions that many other countries have. So that's one of the reasons why the Adoption of Children Act was put under review, so that we can be at the same level as different other countries in the world when it comes to restricting people coming in for adoption.
Was there a concern that perhaps child trafficking could find space to seep in because of the fewer restrictions when the review was the thought of the review was coming in?
Whilst human trafficking was one of the issues that was considered, it wasn't the main focus.
Okay.
I think that because our law is a 1949 based law, the best interests of the child were never part of that law. The best interests of the child come in with the coming in of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which is fairly recent. So that was the main reason. But now that we have child trafficking coming into the fore, and we even have trafficking in persons legislation. Remember, in 2009, when this review was starting, there wasn't even trafficking legislation in Malawi. Our law was enacted in 2015. So even that review would have to be reviewed again, because now we have trafficking in persons legislation that would need to be aligned. But there were various other issues that children need to be protected from, and child trafficking is just one of them.
Now, through this report, we now know that close to 400 children taken out of the country between 2017 and 2024 cannot be traced. Now, how is this possible when all matters related to adoption go through the High Court? That's to do with the foreign adoptions.
The answer is quite simple. I think what the report indicates, and we have to be very careful about wording, what the report indicates is that at least 400 children have been taken out of Malawi.
Okay.
It doesn't say 400 children have been adopted through the High Court and taken out of Malawi. So there's a difference between adoptions that are carried out by the High Court, which are carried out following the principles that I've highlighted earlier. Those are the only adoptions that are legal. But there are certain instances in which people come, they will take a child out of the country, they will forge documents, they will forge birth certificates, they will forge travel documents. So the children that are being taken out are not necessarily being taken out through adoption. Or if they are being taken out, they are being taken out illegally. So that's the difference that we need to point to. So the court can actually account for all the children that have been adopted in those years. And in fact, what the court does, the moment a court issues an order of adoption, it also issues an order ordering the ministry responsible for recording vital statistics to record that adoption. So in the past, it used to be the Ministry of Justice. When you receive an adoption order, there's always an order that says this adoption should be recorded in the adopted children's register, and the child's birth certificate should be endorsed with the words adopted, so that whatever comes from the court now goes to the ministry responsible for recording children. It used to be the Ministry of Justice, now it comes under NRB. So every adoption that is made by the High Court, there's that order. So if there's a discrepancy, we need to find out, are those orders being obeyed? Are children who have been adopted being endorsed in the National Register for Adopted Children? Are birth certificates that are held there being endorsed with the words adopted? So that is the difference. And I will again emphasize, because the feeling seems to be that children are being adopted through the High Court illegally. The High Court can account for its figures.
For all the children.
The children that have been adopted. And for all of them, an order was made.
So the ones that can't be accounted for, it's because of the illegal
It's because
adoption.
of there's an illegality that has happened. They have short-circuited the process.
So they've taken shortcuts.
Yes.
And this is very dangerous because
Absolutely.
then the law can't protect those children. It can't even protect the people that have adopted them, whether they're foreigners or locals. Let's go to let's look at based on your expertise, what are the most common warning signs in the adoption application that signal potential trafficking? When you look at it and you can say, okay, something fishy is going on here, what are the most common signs?
So by the time a case has come to court, it means that social welfare has really removed all the fishy elements, but there should only be a few maybe that have escaped their notice. Okay. So the things that we will look out for instance, is discrepancies. So for instance, sometimes you have discrepancies where one document says this child was born in this year, another document says this child was born in another year. Then we start wondering, is this a case of illegality? If it's illegality, then it's going to make that adoption illegal if we continue in that trend. But in many cases, because in Malawi, despite the fact that every child is supposed to be registered within 6 weeks, we register children late.
Yes.
And sometimes there isn't a correct trail of documentation of the child. So we have to actually sieve through, is this a genuine error? Or is this an error that has been facilitated by that has deliberately been perpetuated by inconsistent information to fool the courts? We also look at issues such as inconsistencies in consent. So sometimes you have more than one person consenting, and one will say, well, I don't know anything about it, and the other one will give consent. That should put you on the alert to say, did everything go in the way that it should have? And sometimes you have cases where the prospective adoptive parents will have paid some money and they will have said, oh, we are helping you so that you look after the other children in the household. So that will raise warning signs. Is this money an inducement? Is this money a genuine gift? So there are certain payments that are normal in adoption.
Yes.
But there are certain payments that are not. So where we see irregular payments, that would put us on the alert to say, wait a minute, something is not going right. Yes. And the other thing that puts the court on alert is that, when the adoption process is in process, these parents are examined by the court.
Yes.
You've heard of cross-examination. So the court actually does its own examination. It's read all the reports, and these reports are supposed to have looked into every area of their lives. So we'll pick a particular area of their lives. And if there's a discrepancy, we are then also put on the alert to say something is not right in this information.
Now, you've talked of guardians and parents. How does the court now definitely verify that the biological parents or the guardians or someone in the community has voluntarily, informed consent without coercion? You've said that maybe you look at certain payments. How does that process go?
So the most important thing is that we demand a very stringent social welfare report. So the report of the guardian ad litem has to look into, it has to be very, very detailed. And one of the innovations that have come up with the High Court now having a family and probate division that looks specifically at these issues is that we've developed guidelines which we have issued to the Department of Social Welfare to say, we want your information to be so detailed. It includes this, and this. So when the person comes to court and we are examining them, we are examining them on the basis of those records of those documents. And if they are not enough, we send them back and say, can you go and do those documents again? But just by examining the person in court, we also get a feeling as to whether they understood what they were consenting to. Because sometimes the person will give consent thinking, oh, the child will come back after education. And then 2 years later, they come and say, where's my child? So we don't want that to happen, because adoption is permanent.
Yes.
The moment a court makes an order, it should be for life. So we really examine them to say, do you understand what you consented to? You would break it down in whatever language needs to be spoken for the person to understand what adoption means, so that you can tell that this is actually free, willing consent.
We can see that the judiciary really does a permanent job, if I should say, and a very good one at that, to make sure that the illegal adoptions are not happening. Justice Mwale, what measures are required to investigate the child's familial origins, to ensure that the child was not stolen or sold prior to the court's placement?
So this puts the Department of Social Welfare, it puts them at a very high standard in their investigations for that social inquiry report, that adoption report that I was talking about. They have to be sure that they have a certificate from NRB.
Okay.
Now, ordinarily, on the face of it, any certificate that is presented to you might actually look genuine.
Yes.
So they need to actually go back and cross-check that this is a genuine certificate. And if there's no certificate, they need to go and look at the chain of information. And usually they involve the police. So many of the children who end up being adopted are children who have been abandoned by their birth mothers at birth. So you've heard about children who are, fished out from pit latrines,
yes.
children who are left at hospitals. So those children will not have any documentation whatsoever. So it's about investigation. So normally what the ministry does is they will get a police report that this child was found at this and this hospital. The hospital gave them the name, we took them to NRB, we got this birth certificate, and that birth certificate should actually indicate the parents as unknown.
Okay.
This is very, very important for what we call the child's birth story, because one day you are going to want to come back to your origins and see who were my parents. So your original birth certificate will actually say parents unknown. But once you are adopted, that will now be endorsed with the new parents. But it doesn't mean that that old record is erased, because you need that to be able to refer to and say, that is where I come from, if that's what you want to do when you grow up.
Yes.
Every person should have the right to be able to go back. So this is where properly tracing and maintaining records is very, very important in the adoption process.
Thank you very much, Justice Mwale. Now, please explain how the court balances the principle of the child's, the best interest of the child against possible illegal market practices that when finalizing an adoption order.
So the court balances the principle of the best interest of the child against illegal markets by strictly enforcing a rule.
Okay.
And that rule dictates that an adoption cannot be in a child's best interest if it's built on a illegal foundation. So we don't treat the best interest of the child as a catchphrase. It's not something we say. It has to be realized through the adoption process. If you read an adoption judgment, you should actually see that the best interest is running through everything. So one of the ways we do that is by rejecting, there's a certain phrase, wealth equals best interest. No, that can't be. We are a poor country. Just because a rich person has come and says, I'm going to take this child, doesn't mean that's in the child's best interest.
Yes.
So we have to prioritize all the other issues that we talked about, subsidiarity, consent, all these things. So that's how we balance it, by checking that, none of the things that are irregular or illegal have happened. So that way, the best interests of the child are the only thing that will determine the outcome of that adoption. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then at what point does an irregular placement cross the threshold, the legal threshold, into criminal child trafficking?
Okay. So irregularity is usually something to do with a mistake. You know, you can make a mistake. Sometimes when you're filing your report, you forget an and an is. That is an irregularity. But when that irregularity involves deception, did you miss out that and because you wanted to deceive the court?
Okay.
When it involves deception, coercion, or financial exchange, did you miss out that and because you received
somebody made your bank
Absolutely.
account fatter?
So that's where, you know, irregularity now becomes child trafficking. So if you look at the definition of trafficking, it is based on three things. There must be an action that somebody does. That action must be done using certain means such as fraud or coercion. And the end result of that action should be exploitation. That is the definition of trafficking. But when it comes to children, we miss out the middle bit. As long as there's an act that procures a child, and that act leads to exploitation, then you have trafficking. So any irregular act that involves deception, coercion, financial exchange, and ends up in exploitation, that is automatically child trafficking, and it is punished by the laws that deal with child trafficking. So it can also be punished by the laws that deal with all the other criminal acts that you have performed in order to get the child. So the acts of forgery, we have a penal code, our laws on crime. If you commit the acts of forgery, the penal code will catch you. If it is definitely determined that you trafficked that child, the Trafficking in Persons Act will find you.
Yes.
If you have taken a child out of Malawi illegally, our immigration laws are going to catch you. You're going to be punished by those laws. So whenever you transition into the criminal field, there are lots of criminal offenses that catch you. And what the court's role is in that respect is that if you are presiding over an adoption and you see these criminal acts, because you are a family court, you are not a criminal court, and you are not there to prosecute anyone. So when you see that this illegality has taken place, you refer it to the police and to the Director of Public Prosecutions. They will investigate, and if they are satisfied that a crime has really taken place, then they will take all the evidence from you and prosecute that person so that they are prosecuted for trafficking. Sometimes it's not possible to get them for trafficking, but they will get them for other offenses like document fraud, forgery, uttering a false document, kidnapping, abduction. All these are criminal offenses. Rape, because the exploitation that comes out. I've said that trafficking is about an act, a means and a purpose of exploitation. It can either be sexual exploitation, so there are offenses of rape, sexual offenses with a child, indecent practices with a child. The child can be exploited in terms of organs. Maybe somebody just wants to go and harvest their kidneys for donor implants. There are offenses under our laws for that practice. And if it's for labor, there are also offenses under our labor laws. Even in the penal code, we have all these offenses that stop people from exploiting other people in those ways.
Now, thank you very much, Justice. As we are going to a close of our talk today, looking at the book Human Trafficking Exposed, how would you say it connects to raising awareness of child protection laws and the ugliness really of illegal adoptions?
Thank you very much. So it's, what we say about human trafficking is that it is a crime that happens in plain sight. We encounter it every day, but we don't recognize it. So as I said, one of my roles is a trainer. I am a facilitator of training for judges to be more aware, for legal practitioners, for criminal justice practitioners to be more aware of what to look out for in what constitutes trafficking. So this book gives you those practical examples. A girl that you might have overlooked on the side of the road as being a mere beggar, you will now begin to see them with different eyes and say, wait a minute, this child could actually be trafficked. When you are a judge dealing with a criminal matter involving kidnapping, you then begin to think, wait a minute, is this kidnapping or is this child trafficking? The reason why child traffickers or human traffickers are able to get away is because those that deal with the criminal justice system, those that are practitioners and actors, they don't always understand. It is a very sophisticated crime. It's modern slavery. So the old slavery, you used to be able to see the method, but the method in trafficking is very hidden.
It's
so even
subtle.
Very subtle. So evidence required. If you're a policeman, if you're going to investigate a case of trafficking, you need to use a different approach. So listening to these stories, reading these stories, you see how traffickers work, and you are more aware. So that things that you may have overlooked, you now begin to see in a new light. Even as judges, when I train judges and magistrates all over the world, they always say, you know what? I never saw that before. So now you travel around, you're at the airport, you see a child traveling with somebody, you start looking at them differently and saying, wait a minute, is this normal?
Yes.
Your eyes need to open. You're in a hotel, you look at the woman who's cleaning your room, you say, is
she employed?
Is she employed? Is she a victim? So books like this, initiatives like this, they open your eyes more.
Thank you very much for really giving us your time today in this podcast. It was a wonderful, wonderful podcast. So are there any other words before we close?
Just basically to say that this is an area where we need a lot of awareness on, and it's very important to always get the facts right. So you can see that sometimes, we focus on the wrong institutions, we focus on the wrong avenues. Human trafficking is real, child trafficking is real, and in order for us to deal with it, we need to be able to keep our eyes open and keep abreast of the actual facts.
Thank you very much. Would love to have you again in the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that is how we end today's podcast with Justice Fiona Mwale, and she was here to help us understand. And we were talking about how child trafficking and illegal adoption are serious violations of human rights and child protection laws. So be there again next time when the Maxwell Matewere podcast is back on.
In a world of chaos, where everything's insane, there's a glimmer of hope that still remains. Through the eyes of a child, we can find our way to a brighter future, a brand new day. With the red cord outreach, we're reaching out, bringing love and support. There's no doubt. Empowerment, resources, and a